in the end, some freaky kid 500 years from now is going to rent a videotape, and it's going to be Buffalo 66, and he's going to go, yo, that Gallo guy is cool. I want to see, let's watch that again, you know, and maybe 10 years after that, he's going to do something, and he's going to remember or be inspired or liberated by or have a new piece of language to continue his life forward. I'm comfortable with that.
The year was 2014. Pretty Little Liars was on its 5th season, and Lana Del Rey's Ultraviolence had just dropped. I was 13 years old, and like many other girls my age at the time, I was deeply immersed in the world of Tumblr.com. It was the age of skin skiffs, Nirvana lyrics, and stills from Adrian Lyon's Lolita. I was discovering my own sense of style, and used Tumblr like a mood board for my dream closet. Costumes from Heathers, The Virgin Suicides, and The Perks of Being a Wallflower were all heavily reblogged by me. I would watch all of these movies and have my worldviews tainted to varying degrees. Then one day, I came across the image of a wide-eyed Christina Ricci, dressed in shiny tap shoes, pale blue tights, and a matching mini dress. That was all I needed before I searched up Buffalo 66 on 123 Movies. I remember being charmed by the movie. I was dazzled by Vincent Gallow's red boots and swooned at the unconventional love story. I was far off from having my first kiss, and the innocent kindness of Layla healing the demented Billy into a vulnerable lover was a fantasy ripe for my malleable mind. I imagined me and my future boyfriend dressing up as the couple for Halloween, but beyond that and my good impression, the movie faded from my consciousness. Flash forward to a little over a decade, and I once again encounter Buffalo 66 while looking for a movie to stream. In the mood for something familiar, I put it on, but I was soon surprised to discover the feeling it now evoked was wholly unfamiliar to me. I found Billy insufferable, and I felt my annoyance for him on a visceral level. He reminded me of men I've loathed in real life, and I started to wonder about the man behind the creation of such a character, writer and director Vincent Gallow. A quick Google search of his name is quite jarring. He now has a reputation for being consistently controversial, known for his unfiltered opinions and the often abhorrent ways he expresses them. But prior to his 1998 debut film, Buffalo 66, he was relatively unknown, at least in the film business. Originally from Buffalo, Vincent Gallow ran away to New York at age 16 to escape a tumultuous home life. By 17, he was making noise with Jean-Michel Basquiat and the experimental band Grey. Throughout the 1980s, he flourished in the New York art scene and exhibited his paintings at the renowned Anina Nosy Gallery. He eventually made his way into acting and appeared in several avant-garde films. All the while, he was conceptualizing a film of his own. He wrote the first version of Buffalo 66 in 1989. The plot was essentially the same, except instead of Billy losing a football bet, he loses a big part in a movie. Then, in 1991, the Buffalo Bills lost the Super Bowl to the New York Giants. The histrionics of that infamous night inspired Gallow to rework the script, with Allison McNall translating his ideas into script form. Gallow describes Buffalo 66 as a love story about a person who is driven by the grievances he's had in his relationship with his mother and father, and they've made him act out in all these aggressive, resentful, fearful, vindictive ways. And at a certain point in his life, he chooses to take responsibility for his own life and his own behavior. If I were to describe the plot, it's about an insecure man named Billy, freshly out of prison, who kidnaps a local girl and forces her to pretend to be his wife in order to impress his parents. The kicker? His parents don't care about him at all. Unless he's blocking the TV during the game, he might as well be a ghost. We watch as Billy flounders to gain the approval of his aloof parents, and along the way, the kidnapped Layla begins to develop Stockholm Syndrome.
Billy, look at that girl. Look at her. She's so creepy. She's so creepy. And you are so nice.
What's that supposed to mean?
I just think, you're much too good for her.
There is no universe in which Layla registers as a real flesh and blood person. To call her a manic pixie dream girl would be an understatement. She's an amalgamation of contradicting male fantasies, or more specifically, Vincent Gallow's. She enters the film through Billy's abduction and remains suspended there, as her character exists solely in relation to him. Throughout the film, her character is devoid of a coherent personality, backstory, or arc of her own. And the most disturbing part of all of this is that the abuse that Layla is subjected to throughout the film was not a work of fiction. Christina Ricci was demeaned, harassed, and degraded all throughout the making of the film. Christina Ricci needs no introduction. She began acting at the age of 10 and has been working steadily ever since, taking on roles across every genre. She has a captivating presence on screen, a presence that, according to our director Vincent Gallow, was his initial motivation to making a film in the first place. Gallow wrote in Another Man magazine, "I had a strong, special reaction to Christina Ricci the first moment I saw her on film. That reaction pushed me to want to make my own film so I could work with her." An interesting statement, considering she was only 17 when filming began on Buffalo 66. At first, there was only mutual admiration between Ricci and Gallow.
I had seen Palookaville, and he was amazing in that movie. He was so good, and after that, I was just like, God, that guy was amazing. And then I got this script and said that he wrote it, so I was very curious, and I read it, and I really liked the script. And then the next day, I met with him, and we just talked, and his enthusiasm for the movie and his passion for it and the vision he had about the movie just sounded incredible.
Ricci, of course, got the part, but alarm bells began to ring before she even made it on set. It was my first movie away from home or without my mother. Gallow didn't want my mom to come. He wanted me to be up there by myself. I was 17 and I had never worked with anyone like this, and I had never worked on a movie that was that low budget before. I'd always worked on things where the more money, the more structure, the more protections in place. All this stuff. Recalling her arrival on set, Gallow would say of Ricci, "She's got a very unconventional body, and when she showed up for filming, I realized she looked totally different from when I last saw her. I was shocked by her ratio." He also boasted she lost 17 pounds, and that was because I only let her eat one whole pizza pie every day. These remarks are deeply troubling. Gallow's fixation on Ricci's appearance and his casual admission of controlling her food intake aren't just inappropriate, they're dehumanizing. It's also incredibly dangerous, especially considering Ricci was an adolescent whose body was still developing.
You and Vincent Gallow, the main character, have this great, very weird, unusual chemistry.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to describe to people what the chemistry is, really. You learn to like him in the movie, but it's a challenge at first.
Right, well, she's supposed to be like his fantasy girl, so
Right.
she likes him no matter what, and the audience sort of has to learn to.
Ricci's appearance in the film is undoubtedly striking. There's a reason it's so evocative, not only to the male gaze, but also to a teenage girl like I was when I fell in love with the film. It's pure fantasy. The cool, homogenized tones of the reversal stock, the snow-covered ground, and Layla's monochrome pastel outfit give her the appearance of a fairy born from the cracked cement sidewalks of Buffalo. The very outfit my younger self adored and dreamed of replicating was curated by Vincent Gallow himself, and I have to admit, he's got a great eye for style. The uniform color of the handbag, tights, and dress paired with silver iridescent tap shoes make her look like an ice princess. It's an undeniably cute outfit. For a grown woman, Gallow had purchased the costume at a local thrift store, and when Ricci saw the bodycon mini dress, she was understandably displeased. I made him make it longer. When we bought it, the skirt was a certain length. He wanted to keep it at that length, and I wanted to add 2 inches. We settled on an extra inch. He wanted it to be ethereal. She does look ethereal in the film, but that has as much to do with Ricci's natural beauty as it does with the outfit. There are ways to achieve an ethereal look while still keeping your lead actress comfortable. This costume wasn't appropriate for a minor, and it was certainly inappropriate for the weather she was working in. While she's out there freezing, he gets to wear a zipped-up jacket, boots and jeans, complete with pockets to keep his hands warm.
It was freezing cold, and I'm wearing this little, shift. I mean, I don't even know how to describe it. 2 inches below my ass and, nearly down to my nipples. It was ridiculous.
Tensions continued to rise once filming began. The scene where Layla is forced to drive her sporty Toyota Corolla proved especially difficult for Richie, who had absolutely no experience driving a stick shift. Every take, right before they called cut, the car would stall out and he would scream at me, she recalled. That's pretty ironic, considering the comedy of the scene hinges on Billy's own inability to drive a shifter.
Is this a shifter car? I cannot drive a shifter car, right? So we got a little situation here. I can't drive these kind of cars. What the f*** is going on?
Berating Richie for not driving correctly feels like exactly the kind of thing the character Billy would do. The lines between Billy and Gallow are blurred, given how much of the story was inspired by Gallow's own upbringing and his troubled relationship with his parents in Buffalo. The fictional family home used in the film is, in fact, one of the houses Gallow actually grew up in. It's possible that Gallow's intentions when screaming at Richie for stalling out was part of a method approach to stay in character. But I would argue that when you're both acting and directing, you're in a position of power where method acting can easily cross the line into abuse, especially when your character is an erratic kidnapper.
To create this kind of sort of unlikable character at first, he was actually mean to you off camera. Is that right?
Well, yeah, because he sort of was really getting into his character, and it was sort of scary because I didn't know that he was doing this. So we would, and he was really nice before we started actual production, and then once we started production, before takes and stuff, he'd yell at me. Not really yell, but say kind of nice things. Like he told me once that he said, "Oh, look at you, those like 2 pimples," and so he.
Always a way to endear yourself to a woman.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, but then I realized he was just in character.
Hey, but he should mention that to you.
I know. I guess he thought he wanted my reaction to be sincere, which it was.
During one scene in the movie, Billy's dad, played by Ben Gazzara, grabs Layla and buries his face in her chest. Christina Ricci later revealed that the moment was completely unscripted. That was not in the script, she said. I looked at Vincent for help, but he was just laughing. He thought it was hilarious. She did what she could in the moment, but clearly she was left unsupported and humiliated. Instead of acknowledging the violation, Gallow recounted the incident with a disturbingly casual tone. Ben attached himself to this whole thing with Christina, where he's all over her boobs. The father is really nutty. He says some nice things, but no, he turns him into a leecher. A leecher. But he's so good. He's drinking a little, right? He's throwing them back, so a couple of times we had confrontations, and he's so talented, but when you're on set with him, there's a whole other thing that's present, and you lose a slight bit of focus. And when Gazzara was asked about the incident, he didn't deny it. Instead, he doubled down. She has such nice voluptuous bosoms. When she stood up, that's right where my face was. Frankly, I'm sorry I didn't go deeper. Here's the thing about this film. Outside the context of Gallow being an enormous jerk, it does do a good job of making you feel empathy for a character who is near unbearable. It accurately depicts the effects that an unloving household can have on a person, how they view the world and the people around them. Obviously, watching this movie as an adult rather than a teenager, I feel less sympathy for him than I did, but the movie is still successful in giving him small character moments that humanize him, such as his absolute denial of touch and affection in response to having been deprived of it his entire life. While I don't enjoy the bowling sequence simply due to Billy's treatment of Layla, I do like how it shows us 1 ounce of confidence and pride in Billy, which really isn't present in the rest of the film beyond the ending. In a way, without knowing what went on behind the scenes, the movie has a surreal, fantastical quality to it. More than anything, though, it's a brutally bleak depiction of a man desperate for parental love and validation, only to find it elsewhere in a romantic connection. That right there is what makes Buffalo 66 so touching and relatable. It speaks to male loneliness and the desire to find a woman who can mother all the pain away.
So you want to go get a room now? You can take a bath, you feel better.
But you don't have to be a porn-addicted man-child to relate to Billy. He speaks to anyone who's learned to mask a broken heart behind a facade of indifference. Anyone who's felt the lingering effects of unresolved trauma or trust issues. I think the movie would resonate with my adult self more if it didn't have a romantic plot. If it had simply been a story about Billy coming to terms with the fact that his parents will never be the people he wants them to be, that the world can be cruel and unfair, but that you still have to take responsibility for your actions, I would have loved it. But that's not this movie. Billy is repeatedly cruel to Layla, and the fact that she falls for him is downright insulting. I despise watching the self-pitying, wronged by everyone Billy drag Layla down with him. I no longer find his domineering presence and her deadpan stare cool. She tries so hard to meet his demands, and he always finds something new to criticize. He's so wounded by his callous mother, yet he adopts her role when he's with Layla. Never satisfied, never acknowledging her efforts. Each time he launches into a new string of insults, I wait in vain for her to stick up for herself and flee from this maniac. Bottom line, this film feels like a classic example of wish fulfillment. Once you realize how similar Billy is to Vincent Gallow, it all becomes gross. Take, for example, one of the very first scenes. Billy is using a urinal next to another man who can't help but oogle him, whispering, "But it's so big." Billy responds by launching into a homophobic tirade. What does this scene really establish beyond flaunting the character's enormous ego? It's a juvenile daydream masquerading as character development, revealing far more about the filmmaker's insecurities than the characters. Okay, time to jump back into our timeline. Principal photography for Buffalo 66 wrapped in the late spring of 1997, and almost immediately afterward, Christina Ricci would begin filming for another film, The Opposite of Sex, in June of 1997.
Sex always ends in kids or, like, relationships. I want the opposite of all that.
The Opposite of Sex.
A production in which she was not harassed and demeaned on a daily basis. So it's no big surprise that come press junket time, Christina seemed far more eager and willing to promote The Opposite of Sex rather than Buffalo 66. Newsflash! Layla, the character, might have fallen in love with a narcissistic asshole, but Christina Ricci, the real-life woman, never did. Then came award season. It was here when the trouble really began. But first, just a bit more context. Vincent Gallow harbored a resentment toward Angelica Houston being in his film. Houston, who plays Billy's Buffalo Bills-obsessed mother, was cast by the film's distributor, Lionsgate. Gallow recalled, "Lionsgate agreed that if I got certain cast members, they would greenlight the financing." And this frustration Gallow felt spilled into the film's production. Here he is again with his disparaging remarks about his female cast members. The great Angelica Houston. God forbid she should have a job where she works. Forget that we paid her $250,000. Suddenly, she has to have her own hair person. They have to fly first class. Her own makeup person, her assistant, the wig, the $20,000 wig. And it's all coming out of basically my salary. The final straw is that she refused to work Easter Sunday. Sure. A lot of these frustrations are understandable, especially with a low-budget film that you're helping to finance. This sort of thing isn't terribly unusual in Hollywood. But what is unusual in Hollywood is to badmouth an actor who is an industry staple, one who has garnered a significant amount of respect in the filmmaking business. There are certain toes you should not tread on.
It was a low-budget film. No, Angelica Houston, that piece of was the most expensive thing on Buffalo 66.
Nice.
Here's Gallow's thoughts on the 1998 Sundance Festival. "I showed it at Sundance, but I didn't win any prizes. I was booed there and got a lot of really bad press. People don't remember that now because the film eventually did pretty good for what it was, but I couldn't get any festivals then. I was shut out except for Sundance. The Spirit Awards, all those award things, they made it clear that they were not interested in the film. So my last chance was at Cannes. But it turned out that Angelica Houston was not, completely happy with the film, either for how she looked or how she came off, or she didn't get enough roses or we didn't kiss her ass enough. At some point, I told her some things like, 'Listen, baby, we got your name, that's all I needed. I got my money. I'll put your wig on a fat truck driver and shoot him from the back.' And that was when we had a falling out. Apparently, she was best friends with the VinCon president Gilles Jacob, and mysteriously, I was disinvited to the Cannes Film Festival.
My son used to be a beautiful baby. Oh, you should have seen him. He was so beautiful. Look at him now.
While I am not usually one to in any way support this sort of industry blacklisting, in this case, I'll make an exception. If what Gallow even claims is true. Let's return to a piece of that quote. "I was shut out except for Sundance." Well, despite Sundance being the only festival to accept his film, Gallow had no kind words for them either. First off, Gallow has claimed that the director Paul Schrader, who was a judge at the festival, had campaigned against him. He was very offended by my Q&A. He was running around like a bitter queen, saying that he didn't like me and there was no way he was going to vote for me. Schrader, for his part, said that Buffalo 66 was a bold and smart film, but Mr. Gallow, whom I do not know, seems to be the sort who hides behind conspiracy theories. Throughout the Q&A, nearly every word out of Gallow's mouth was bitter and abrasive. When someone remarked that directors were being treated like rock stars, he responded, "I am a rock star. This festival is a step down for me. I'd rather be in Cannes." And it just keeps going. Remember The Opposite of Sex, the movie that Richie filmed right after Buffalo 66? It premiered at that very same Sundance festival. And that fact alone was enough to stir a level of hatred and vitriol in Gallow that would persist, and still does to this day. A hatred that is mostly projected upon Richie.
Christina Ricci, little chubby girl.
Right, okay,
why is she bad?
She's sexy.
I find her sort of engaging actress. Thought she was good in Monster.
She's good in Buffalo 66. She's
Absolutely.
really good.
Awesome.
Yeah, she's awesome, I think, and beautiful. I felt that at a certain point, I was surprised that she didn't seem to respond to the film and certainly didn't support the film. But I wasn't mean to her. We had a nice relationship while we made the film.
Here's what you said, I'll quote. It's okay when she wasn't drunk on the set.
Yeah, she was much better. When she wasn't drunk, she was much better.
She drinks?
I think she's an alcoholic. It was either that or she was on cough syrup the whole time.
Wow.
I don't like her. She's an ungrateful C word. But it's okay. She's basically a puppet. I told her what to do and she did it. Come on. When you say that about an actress, when you call her an alcoholic and stuff, it's hard for her to get future work, isn't it?
Yeah,
and then she's on cough syrup.
Alcoholism is a self-diagnosed disease. Who am I to judge?
Right, you're not a doctor.
Who am I? I'm not a doctor.
Right.
And I hadn't actually seen her do the things that I felt that she was doing.
She was mean to you?
She was just like, she had the miserable publicist, Mira Buxbaum, and they decided to promote The Opposite of Sex because it was the film,
right.
And, let's promote the film, yeah.
Right.
That's what happens in Hollywood.
Yeah, because there's more to support the film than there is to support the non-film.
Oh.
Guys, Vincent Gallow is an egomaniac. He is undoubtedly talented, but despite claiming to embrace criticism, he has dismissed most of the critiques of the film as left-wing politics, even when the reviews were largely positive.
Films directed by actors, I approach them with trepidation because invariably they contain too much acting. There's no one to say stop. This was no exception, but it turned out to be quite beguiling, a bit of a mixture. There's an awful lot of self-indulgent experiment, I think. There's sort of trendy jump cuts and fun with frames, where he puts lots of different frames in the one big frame, which simply draw attention to themselves.
It's sort of refreshing to see somebody playing around with the medium a little bit and pulling it and stretching it.
It's refreshing, but I don't think it worked. It was nice to see that he was having a go at it. And also the Christina Ricci character, he kidnaps this teenage tap dancer, asks her to pretend to be his loving wife, and they fall in love. And I kind of think this was a bit like a male fantasy wet dream, sort of kidnapping this sort of wonderful 17-year-old with enormous bosoms. And Christina Ricci is great, but she can't do much with the character because it's a fantasy, it's a male fantasy. I got less and less niggled as the film progressed, as I realised it was actually suckering me into liking it, which was great. I found it entertaining.
Suckering you into liking it?
Yeah, it was self-indulgent, but it kind of in a good way. I think first films often are best when they're self-indulgent.
I was very successful in the 80s as an artist, so to be classified because you didn't do your research and really read about where I was coming from as an actor, Hollywood actor turned filmmaker, is an irresponsible comment. And I sense a little bit of your own personal hang-ups as a woman that made you incapable of transcending them and enjoying the love story, which is quite evolved and quite modern. I enjoy critics, and I am comfortable being criticized. I'm only not comfortable when I feel the critics have personalize the reaction to a piece of art based on any sort of itchy hang-ups or special interest groups. I can feel when there's left-wing politics involved with that I may offended. I can feel when there's left-wing politics that respond to a film. If you go to Sundance and you make a film and it has a homosexual character in it, you're immediately embraced as being innovative or progressive in some sort of way. The most mainstream movie that I saw at Sundance was The Opposite of Sex, which is, I mean, it's a TV movie at best, and it's shown in a film festival because it has homosexuality as a theme. And those things, in a bigger way, I'm offended by critics, never in a personal way.
Also, regulars of the channel know I'm a huge David Lynch fan, and I can't help but see parallels between scenes in Buffalo 66 and Lynch's work. Gallow has been asked about this, and while I'm not claiming Lynch has ownership over any particular aesthetic, or that Gallow was definitely influenced by him, but Gallow's defensive response to the suggestion makes me more inclined to believe that the influence is there.
But the biggest problem I have with critics right now is that there are a few filmmakers that I'm attributed to over and over, like David Lynch or John Cassavetes. Two filmmakers I don't really like very much, and I certainly wasn't influenced by. But because journalists like to package things and categorize things, they need to use these names. But it's very lazy. I mean, you know, cinema existed a long time before David Lynch, and there were many films that had unusual families and unusual characters.
Vincent Gallow is obviously far from alone when it comes to toxic behavior in Hollywood. There's a seemingly endless list of abusers and predators on and on and on. What makes Gallow unique, and to be clear, I don't say this as a compliment, is that rather than ignoring allegations or simply keeping his mouth shut, he seems to relish being as unlikable as possible. He appears to take pleasure in spewing as much hate as he possibly can. He just can't help himself. Then there's the whole art versus the artist debate, something that is spoken about extensively when studying art. It's a complicated gray area. While I'm not going to argue for one side or the other, I'll admit that I've found myself appreciating movies and artworks made by people who are, frankly, despicable. There's a distance there that makes it possible. But for some reason, with an individual like Gallow, and specifically with Buffalo 66, I just cannot find that disconnect. I can't compartmentalize the work and appreciate whatever good might be there. I feel the same way about Woody Allen. I think a big part of that has to do with this. Seeing the despicable person on the screen, watching them craft their own fantasy, and insert themselves into it. I can enjoy watching Rosemary's Baby even though Roman Polanski is a monster, because I don't see the monster in that film. I don't feel him there. And while I used to love this film, it's impossible to unsee how much of Buffalo 66 was just Gallow writing his own twisted wish fulfillment. And it makes me sick. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and if you want more videos like this, please consider subscribing. And I want to give a shout out to all my Patreon and channel members. You guys keep this channel going, so thank you so much for all your support. And if you guys really love this channel and want to support it, please consider checking out Patreon. I have unedited reactions over there of full movies. You can make movie requests and all that good stuff. So check it out if you're interested. And thanks again. I'll see you guys next time. Camcorder Cameron, signing out.